Hi everybody, welcome to CTL 1608 for the winter of 2013. This course is designed as a journey that illustrates key ideas in the development of constructive approaches to online learning and teaching. And it's historical. You're going to be reading seminal texts by key researchers and theorists in the field. And it additionally tries to trace the various theoretical and philosophic strands of thinking that have contributed to our current understanding. So what I'm going to do in this little video is basically go through some of the kind of key ideas in there, show you where we're going to be meeting these different ideas in the various weeks, as you can see, weeks 1 to 12 here, and just go over some of those concepts to give you a kind of conceptual map of the journey that we're going to be taking. So we're going to start with views of reality in the mind and consider the different views of how we learn things. And one of the readings, for instance, for week 1, and in week 1 I'm going to be moderating, but after that you guys will be, and I'll show you more about that later. I'm going to put in here some questions based on those readings for you to respond to. But this first article by Vrasidas really it contrasts objectivism and constructivism, and it lays a kind of framework for the work that we're going to do in the course, so it's a handy article. Basically, starting with behaviorism, which is a branch of psychology, and later cognitive psychology, these researchers took an objectivist view of the world where they believed there was a real world we experience and that knowledge in that world has an objective existence, so the concepts, words, ideas, objects. And that these things exist independent of us. And so from this perspective, the challenge of teaching is to convey a complete and kind of accurate understanding of knowledge. And that's accomplished by presenting ideas clearly so they become correctly encoded in the learner's mind. So really it's a question of really saying what you need to say as a teacher as clearly as possible. Now, that actually is proved not to be actually an effective way of doing instruction, which is why there's been this move away from kind of traditional approaches to teaching. But a lot of instructional design is based on this objectivist worldview, and in this perspective, the important thing in teaching is to identify the necessary knowledge steps and then present them in the most effective sequence to produce the desired learning outcome. Now, by contrast, constructivism holds that while there is perhaps a real view of, a real world we experience, knowledge in that world doesn't have an existence that is independent of us. Rather, individuals construct their own personal meanings and their interpretations of the world based on their own experiences. And so your interpretations are shaped by past experience. And the challenge of education is to help students make really great constructions. So there are two very different traditions within educational theory. They're very separate. They came from different locations, and they're both psychological, though. One was the learning sciences, which is an interdisciplinary approach to understanding learning, and the other was adult education. And adult education emerged more clearly as a field in the 1960s, and it developed its own educational theory called andragogy, which many of you will have heard of. And it differentiates itself from pedagogy, which is supposedly the teaching of children. We tend to use, the people in the learning sciences tend to use the word pedagogy, not actually just to mean children, but as teaching and not to be differentiated from adults. And there's in fact a lot of overlap between what's good for adults and what's good for children. It's not that they're completely separate ways of teaching at all, I think, from a learning sciences point of view. These two views are based in very different sort of traditions of research and different literatures. Now, in this course, most of the articles are coming from the learning sciences, but many of you, I mention adult ed because many of you will have had some experience in this area and may come across readings from this perspective while you're writing papers, so I just wanted to kind of include that. Now, within constructivism, there are a number of different strands, and we are going to sort of look at those. And the Phillips article, actually, in week 3, does a nice job of differentiating some of those. Phillips, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the many faces of constructivism. So there are the cognitive constructivists following Piaget, which today include a lot of learning science researchers like Papert, who you may have heard of, who developed Logo, Lauren Resnick, who developed thinking tags, and Amy Bruckman, who developed moose crossing. And, oops, I have my notes confused here. Yeah. So they all see learning as being very closely tied to exploration. And they consider that technology is one such exploratory construct, context for teaching and learning. Now, Bruner is also one of those classic researchers, and we were going to see his work in week 2. Here we go. Yes, overview of Jerome Bruner, which is kind of explains his work, and then I've given you a couple of chapters written by him, because I think it's good to read the actual writers themselves, not just similarly with Dewey, and Dewey's a very nice writer anyway, so it's good to read his stuff. So then we move into, we have these groups of people called social constructivists, and they take their focus from Vygotsky, who we're reading in those first 2 weeks around the history of constructivism there, and they see learning as being tied to social negotiation, and researchers like Hiltz in computer-mediated communication and Margaret Ryle, who developed learning circles, they take these kinds of perspectives, and it's becoming a very common one in online learning research generally. And in week 3, Schwartz and Fisher, this one, building versus borrowing, do a really nice job of looking in detail at what active learning really entails in an educational context. Then Sawyer in that same week, here, Optimizing Learning, that's a nice summary of all the learning sciences research from the last 50 years and sort of kind of key points. So those are very helpful to situate our understanding. And other versions of constructivism take the learning context as being critical, and these approaches see cognition as situated, that our learning is created in and connected to the particular context in which it's learned. So case-based learning, simulations, anchored instruction are all examples of situated learning, and we're going to be looking at these theories in weeks 5 and 6. But the importance of the notion of situatedness for our journey through this course is that it impacts both what is taught and what is learned, what is going to be remembered. And with this perspective, it's not possible to teach only through analyzing and structuring the subject matter. Who the learner is, what they bring to the situation, how the situation is structured, all those things are really important too. Now, distributed cognition is it's a branch of the learning sciences actually, and here we're going to be looking at it in weeks 7 and 8. And it connects philosophy and cognitive science and moves the focus of learning and cognitive activity away from in the head to that of being part of the broader and social technological world. So computers and other machines are seen as artifacts that support this social and cultural view of learning. And P's article in week 8 is a good example of that. And we're going to be looking at the different ways distributed cognition has been used to conceptualize the learning process. But this cultural view is a very different use of the term culture than that which we're going to encounter in week 9. Because here we're going to be looking at critical perspectives, and I'll get to those in a minute. And it's that which are a more anthropological, more sociological perspective on how societies run, how knowledge is accessed, how it moves. But other theories that privilege context in particular ways and see it as playing a major role are sociocultural theories. And prominent socioculturalists include Cole and Levin-Wenger, Rogoff, Wersch. And they, like the social constructivists, draw heavily on Vygotsky's ideas about the preeminent importance of the social in learning and development, but they emphasize the role of the social even more. And they see online environments as another context for where identities are developed and mutually transformed through activities, and that the net result is that both things are changed. The individual is changed and the context is changed so it's a kind of reciprocal activity. And we first look at these foundational ideas in week 4 with readings from Vygotsky and Piaget and Cole and Wersch. And then weeks 5 and 6, we look more at more influential work from anthropology, so Levenwinger's notion of communities of practice. And so learning in that view is something that happens through participation in day-to-day activities of the community. By participation, you learn. And as well, we'll see other cultural discussions of the implications of schooling being contextually situated. What does that mean for our teaching? So as I said, in week 9, we're going to be looking more at the critical perspectives that are postmodern. And these papers' issues of identity, of power, embodiment, social justice are going to be looked at. And I think I think it's going to be something that will become more important in online learning. At the moment, it's very noticeably absent. The postmodern theories don't seem to come into contact with online learning theory at this point. And I think there were some very pragmatic reasons for that happening historically. But I think in order, as it is, I think online learning is very under-theorized. So I think this is something that we're going to see more of. And potentially these ideas, these postmodern ideas of social justice and such things should help us as teachers create more inclusive, more culturally responsive, and more humane contexts for learning. In week 10, we're going to look at online community, and community is one of those words that are used all the time. It's become the kind of, very trendy thing. So we'll look and see what are the different ways it's being used, and how helpful are they in understanding what goes on in online communities. And then in week 11, you have a final assignment planning week where you can ask questions. You can find, maybe if you want to work with other people, if you've got an idea that would benefit from being a collaborative project, you can find people to work on that, although you can start that earlier. You can ask questions, but it's a week off from the readings because they're quite heavy, and you'll need the week by the time you get there. And then the final week, we look at online design and sort of pulling all of these ideas together and thinking about, well, what are their implications? And that's the kind of topic 2 of the final paper, is designing an online learning environment, considering in a context of your choice, considering all of these sort of ideas and trying to pull some of this together. So so you should start out by making sure that you get signed up for the weekly discussion moderation, and you can just go in to a note, add your name to the week that you're interested in, and then remember to press save and exit. And similarly for your email address, for the class, because the university sends everything to your U of T account, your uToronto, mail.utoronto account. But if you are using another email, you can put that there. But you should also make sure that you'll have everything forwarded from your uToronto account, or that you're checking it. Yeah. So to make sure that you're getting all the messages you're supposed to get. Now, one thought is that a lot of this stuff is quite hard, but I'm very aware that people are coming at this course. There are MA students, MEd students, doctoral students, and people are in different stages of their program, and they have different interests, they have different backgrounds. So it's not like I'm thinking that you're all starting at A and you're all going to end up at B. People are going to have very different trajectories through this course, and so I suggest that you relax and try to enjoy it, that you do the readings, ask questions, and when you don't know something, ask, because there are no stupid questions here. This is how we learn. I will work with you to answer those questions. Your colleagues in the course will help you answer those questions, and we'll work at this together. And I find that each class makes a different kind of little community, and we learn to interact in particular kinds of ways. And it can be very supportive, and I encourage you to answer each other's questions. I think of these online courses as that reading is like listening, and writing is like talking. And to have a good conversation, you have to do both. So it's more important that when you write something, you write about something thoughtfully, and you write about it in relation to what other people have said about those ideas, and rather than just sort of whipping in, writing something, and then not looking again. So to that end, to help you kind of organize your time a little bit, you can, if you go into preferences, you can go to notifications, and you can ask to be notified for under different circumstances. So when somebody replies or sends me a private message, posts a message on the class wall, I do the sending private messages and the technical questions and course help. Because even though I come into this course every day to check, those ones I want to know immediately so that I can respond quickly. But you can choose which views you want to receive information on. For instance, if you were moderating and co-moderating in your co-moderating week, you might want to get all of the replies to one of your notes, and in a particular view. And you can do that, and you can change them. You don't have to have the same ones throughout the course. You can change them each week. So, but I want you to know that's there. And you have to put your email address there and press save when you've selected those. Okay, but you can change them as many times as you want. So that's a way of kind of keeping pace with what's going on, and without having to always just be logging in on the off chance that something's happened. You can set that up so that it meets your particular needs. I do encourage you to come in, though, regularly to the course, like to log in at least 3 times a week, because otherwise you'll find that there's a lot of stuff has happened. It's better to come in more often for less time than less often for more time, I think. So, but one has to find one's own path through this. So that's just, if you haven't done this before, that might be a way to think about it. So ask questions, enjoy, realize that this is just the beginning of a journey that will continue after the course is over, because there's, like good literature, all these articles can be read again over and over, and each time you read them, if several years have elapsed, you'll understand them in a different way, and that's the nature of learning, really. So, so if it feels a bit overwhelming, kind of battle on. You're not going to understand everything each week, and that's okay. This is like these are like signposts. It's like a map to a field that you will go on developing in ways that are helpful to you in your own teaching, in your own learning, your own studying. So, it's not supposed to be everything. So don't get disheartened if you're finding the material difficult, because it's worth the push, because I think these ideas are very useful for you as you continue. So I look forward to talking to you more online very soon, and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.